She told me, "It was just a mistake. Please don't ruin our family." But I stayed silent, collected every proof, took back control of my life, and walked away calmly. Months later, the man she chose left her, her friends turned away, and karma finished what I started. I never thought one message could change the shape of my life. Our days moved with small rhythms: breakfast, bedtime stories. I am 36, and I trusted the steady sameness of those routines. She planned little celebrations and kept the house in ways that felt like care. When small odd things began, I told myself not to panic. A package arrived with handwriting I did not know. She called it from an old friend. I accepted the answer because it kept the peace. Later, she said she was at a dinner but came home much later, smelling faintly of a scent I could not place. Little explanations piled up into doubt. One night, her phone buzzed on the counter. I looked. The messages were casual at first, but then private plans appeared. They mentioned meetups and details that did not fit with friendship. I did not read everything, only enough to know the tone had shifted. I avoided loud scenes. I did not want to wake the children or turn this into a public fight. Instead, I watched for patterns. Cups left in odd places. Calendar entries removed. She smiled at her screen and looked away. Repetition made the truth clearer than any single proof. She thought she could keep it hidden, but secrecy is heavy. One message landed in the wrong thread and showed a line that belonged to someone else. The man's name was Caleb, a neighbor we had often waved to. That ordinary familiarity made the betrayal feel sharper. When I asked her, she first denied it. After hours, she admitted there had been a relationship. Her voice was flat, as if saying it cost her energy. She offered apologies that seemed rehearsed. I kept my tone even. My priority in that moment was the children and their sense of safety. I left the house that night to collect myself. I drove until the city lights blurred and thought about what fairness meant now. Revenge flashed through my mind, quick and satisfying in a story. I resisted it. What mattered most was keeping the kids' world steady and planning practical next steps. I started with small, careful acts. I secured shared accounts, gathered important documents, and made notes of dates and messages in a private folder. I did not do this to punish. I did it to be prepared and to protect. Documenting facts felt less like spite and more like building a foundation to make clear choices. At the same time, I met with a counselor to steady my thinking. I wanted to act with intent rather than in a flash of anger. That did not make the hurt smaller, but it shaped it into something useful. I began to imagine ways to set boundaries that would matter for the children and for my own dignity. Even as I planned, part of me wanted to let karma handle the rest. I thought about timing and proportion, about responses that would not escalate chaos but would hold people accountable. The first part of any plan was simple: keep the kids safe and watch carefully. The rest would come with time. I returned home the next morning with a calm I did not feel. I moved through the day on autopilot, making breakfasts and answering school messages. Inside, I had begun to rewrite the story of our life, page by page. I would not let one secret erase every good thing we had, but I would not ignore what had been done either. The days after the truth came out felt quiet in a strange way. We didn't fight, not anymore. She spoke softly, as if hoping gentleness could patch something already torn apart. I answered when necessary, about dinner, about school, about bills, but there was distance now, a space between us that would never close. At night, I lay awake replaying years in my head, trying to spot the moment when love had turned into routine and routine had become boredom. I stopped searching after a few days. It didn't matter when it started. It mattered that she had chosen it, and that I had to live with the results. Her affair wasn't just about another man. It was about the deception that followed. The lies, the half-truths, the fake smiles. What hurt the most was realizing how practiced she had become at pretending. She would hold my hand at a family dinner, and then, the next day, send him messages from the same phone. That kind of dual life leaves a scar deeper than any argument ever could. But instead of reacting, I began to plan. Revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about restoring my own control, step by step. I stopped sharing updates about my schedule. I created a separate account for my income. I reached out to a lawyer quietly, not to start a war, but to understand where I stood. Every move I made was deliberate, almost methodical. One evening, she tried to talk, sitting across the table with that careful look people use when they've already decided their own excuses. She said, "It just happened. I didn't mean to hurt you." I looked at her and said, "You didn't hurt me once. You hurt me every day you lied." After that, the silence between us became permanent. Around that time, her relationship with Caleb began to crumble, too. He was married. His wife had found out, and soon their neighborhood whispers grew louder. It reached her friends, then her family. She tried to keep it private, but truth has a way of leaking through walls no one can seal. I never exposed her. I didn't have to. The truth handled itself. What I focused on was rebuilding the home for my kids. I cooked dinner every night, helped with homework, and showed up to their soccer games. I wanted them to feel that love could still exist in the ruins of what we'd built. Slowly, they began to adjust. They laughed again, asked about weekends, and invited friends over. The house started to sound like home again, just without the weight of secrets. She began to notice that she wasn't part of our rhythm anymore. I didn't exclude her, I just stopped depending on her. There's a quiet power in indifference, something stronger than anger. She saw it. She felt it. And that's when guilt started doing my work for me. A few weeks later, I got a call from Caleb's wife. She thanked me for not going public, said she was filing for divorce, and wished me strength. We spoke for less than 5 minutes, but that short talk gave me more peace than anything else had in months. It reminded me that survival doesn't always look like vengeance. Sometimes it's quiet, steady endurance. Still, I had one final step in mind. Something symbolic, not cruel, not dramatic, just enough to let her feel what it's like to lose what she took for granted. I waited for the right moment, and when it came, I was ready. It began slowly, almost like a project. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I just wanted her to understand what she'd broken, to feel, for once, the weight of losing something real. I didn't announce what I was doing. I simply stopped giving her access to comfort. The first thing I did was take control of the finances. We still lived under the same roof for the kids' sake, but I separated our accounts completely. The joint one we used for bills was drained to the essentials. She noticed, of course, but didn't ask right away. She knew better than to start another argument. Then, I told her I'd be taking the kids to visit my sister for a few days. She agreed, thinking it was just a short trip. What she didn't know was that I used those days to meet with my lawyer again and prepare everything: custody, property, documentation. I wasn't being vindictive. I just wanted a clean exit. When I came back, I was calmer than I had been in months. She must have sensed it, because she tried harder than ever to act normal. She cooked dinners again, asked about my day, even suggested a weekend getaway to reconnect. The effort almost made me laugh. Maybe guilt can sound like love when it's desperate enough. I played along, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted her to think everything was settling down. That was important for what came next. One evening, she mentioned Caleb again, pretending it was about closure. She said he had left his wife and wanted to make things right. I nodded, pretending to listen, while every word just confirmed how little she had changed. She still thought she could balance both lives. A few days later, I received a message from a mutual friend who told me Caleb had lost his job. His wife had sent proof of the affair to his company. The man's life was crumbling, and now he wanted to cling to her. It was poetic in a way. The two people who risked everything for something secret now had nowhere to hide. I decided it was time. One Saturday morning, while the kids were at their grandparents' house, I asked her to sit down. She looked nervous but hopeful, maybe thinking I was ready to forgive. I handed her an envelope. Inside were divorce papers, calm, clean, already reviewed and signed from my end. She went pale, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've already decided?" "Yes," I said. "This isn't revenge. It's balance." She started crying, not the dramatic kind, just quiet tears that said she finally realized I meant it. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. I moved out 2 weeks later. The kids stayed with me most of the time. She got the weekends. She tried to rebuild, to show up more, but something in her energy had changed. Caleb was out of her life by then. Apparently, he went back to his wife for a second chance. Life moved on. I focused on work, therapy, and the kids. Slowly, laughter returned to our house. I wasn't trying to replace what was lost, just to grow something new in its place. Months later, she showed up one afternoon to drop off the kids and lingered at the door. "You seem happy," she said. I smiled a little. "I am." She looked down, holding back whatever she wanted to say next, then walked away. That's when I realized my revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about living better without her. Still, karma wasn't done yet. It had its own way of circling back. And when it did, even I was surprised by how deeply it hit her. It happened almost a year later. By then, life had found a rhythm again. School runs, weekend hikes, movie nights with the kids. My world was calm, ordinary, and finally peaceful. I didn't check her social media or ask mutual friends about her. I didn't need to. But news still has a way of finding you when it's meant to. One morning, a friend called and mentioned she'd seen her at a local diner, sitting alone. No Caleb, no ring, just her and a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold. I thanked the friend and changed the topic, but the image stayed in my mind all day. A few weeks later, she called me herself. Her voice sounded different, softer, slower, like someone carrying invisible weight. She asked if we could talk for a few minutes. Out of courtesy, I agreed. She came by the next evening, standing in the same doorway where she'd once said she wanted to reconnect. Only this time, there was no confidence in her eyes. She started talking about Caleb, how he'd promised to leave his wife for her, but never did. How she waited months for him to call, only to find out he'd moved to another state. Then she said something I didn't expect. I thought leaving you would make me happy, but I destroyed the only place that ever felt like home. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, realizing how life had done what anger couldn't. I didn't need to raise my voice, didn't need to remind her of the nights I couldn't sleep. Karma had been patient and exact. She went on, telling me how friends had drifted away, how even her own family had grown distant after learning what happened. Her job situation wasn't stable either. Apparently, Caleb's wife had sent screenshots of their messages to her workplace, too. It wasn't public, but enough people knew. She'd become a quiet topic in small-town gossip, the kind that doesn't fade easily. The old me might have felt satisfaction hearing all that, but instead, I just felt done. Completely done. The anger that once kept me awake was gone. All that was left was a clean kind of peace, not forgiveness exactly, but freedom. Before she left, she asked if I'd ever consider trying again, for the kids. I shook my head gently. They already have stability, I said. They have 2 parents who love them. That's enough. She nodded, holding back tears. When she walked out, it felt like the last page of a book I'd already finished. A month later, she moved to another city. The kids visited her sometimes, but she didn't stay long anywhere. Her messages to me became less frequent, polite, brief updates about the children. I kept it that way. Boundaries had become a form of peace. Around that same time, something shifted in me, too. I started to genuinely enjoy my solitude. Early morning runs, quiet evenings with music, cooking dinner while the kids told me about their day. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just living, lighter, clearer, and with no lies attached to my life. Sometimes people ask if I regret not taking harsher revenge. I don't. Watching her face the consequences of her own choices was enough. I didn't have to destroy her. She did that herself when she betrayed something real. A little over a year after our divorce was finalized, something unexpected happened. It was a Saturday morning, calm and quiet. The kids were watching cartoons when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was her sister. Her voice was low, hesitant. She told me that she, my ex-wife, had been in a minor car accident. Nothing serious, but it was enough to scare her. She was alone at the time, driving back from a night shift at a new job. Her sister said, "She asked me to tell you she's sorry for everything." I thanked her for letting me know, hung up, and sat for a while just thinking. Not about the accident, but about how far apart our lives had drifted. Once upon a time, I would have rushed to that hospital, heart racing with worry. Now, I simply hoped she was okay, and that she'd finally learned to live with her choices. A few days later, she texted me directly. It was short. "I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for the way I treated you, for the lies, for the betrayal. I see it now, the damage I caused, not just to us but to myself." I read it twice, then replied, "I accept your apology. Take care of yourself." No long explanations. No reopening wounds. Just closure. That was the moment I realized revenge had already completed its circle. Karma didn't need my help. It had been quietly rewriting her life all along. Everything she had once taken for granted, family, respect, peace, had slipped away. And not because I destroyed it, but because she chose a path built on deception. Meanwhile, I had rebuilt something real. The kids were thriving, their grades better, their smiles genuine. We had a small backyard garden now, and every Sunday, we'd cook something new together. Those little moments became the anchors of my new life. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself thinking about the past, not out of longing, but as a reminder of how fragile trust can be. I learned that revenge doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes, it looks like silence, self-control, and moving on while the other person faces their own reflection. Months went by, and I heard less and less about her. I think she moved again, maybe trying to start over somewhere people didn't know her story. And that's fine. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. But she'll always know what she lost. And that's the kind of lesson life doesn't let you forget. Last week, my daughter asked me out of nowhere, "Dad, do you still love Mom?" I smiled a little and said, "I'll always care about her. But sometimes caring means letting go." She nodded, and we went back to our pancakes. That was it. Simple and true. So, that's how it ended. No shouting, no courtroom drama, no fiery revenge. Just life doing what it does best, balancing itself. When I look back now, I don't see tragedy anymore. I see a story, one that started with betrayal, passed through revenge, and ended in peace. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something similar, it's this. You don't have to destroy someone to get even. Sometimes, the quiet life you build afterwards is the revenge. And honestly, watching peace return to my home, hearing my kids laugh again, that's all the closure I ever needed.